Hi, my name is davisLowe, and I'll be doing a presentation on Jupyter Notebook. To begin, we're going to go over a brief history. To fully understand what Jupyter Notebook is and what functionality is it has to offer, you need to know how it's originated. Um, Back in 2005, after Python was created in 1980, Robert Kern and Fernando Perez attempted building a notebook system. Unfortunately, the first time around, the prototype had never really become fully usable, and it kind of failed. 2 years later, the IPython team had um, kept working on it, and in 2007 they were able to implement a notebook type system. And by October 2010, there was a prototype of a web notebook. And by 2011, this prototype was incorporated and it was released with version 0.12 on December 2011. And soon after, the Python team got numerous awards, such as the Advancements of Free Software and the Jolt Productivity Award. For a basic introduction, the Jupyter Notebook is a open source web application that you can use to create and share documents that contain live code, equalizations, visualizations, and text. Um, you basically can display your code for other people to see or just for yourself for personal use. Jupyter Notebook is maintained by the people at Project Jupyter, so they have a separate project run through Python. Jupyter Notebooks are also a spin-off project from the IPython project, which is used to have um, IPython notebook projects itself. The name Jupyter comes from the core supported programming languages that it supports, Julia, Python, and RJupyter, which ships the IPython kernel and it allows you to write your programs in Python, but there are currently over 100 other kernels that you can use. Components. The notebook is the notebook has a web application. It's an interactive web application for writing and running code interactively and authoring notebook documents. There are kernels, which are separate processes that start by the notebook web application that runs users' code in a given language and returns output back to the notebook web application. The kernel also handles things like computations for interactive widgets, tab completion, and introspection. And it also has notebook documents, which are self-contained documents that um, contain a presentation of all content visible in the notebook web application, including inputs and outputs of the computations, narrative, text, equations, and media representations of objects. Each notebook document has its own kernel. So for every new notebook you create, it'll have its own kernel. Some of the main features, um, there's in-browser editing for code with automatic syntax, highlighting, indentation, and tab completion. There's also the ability to execute code from the browser, with the result of computations attached to the code, which generate them. Uh, you can also display the result on computation using rich media representations such as HTML, LaTeX, PNG, FSG, and many others. For example, publication quality figures can be rendered by the Matplot library and can be included inline. In-browser editing for rich text use, that the Markdown markup language, which can provide commentary for the code, and it's not limited by plain text. There's the ability to easily include mathematical notation within Markdown cells using LaTeX and rendered natively by MathJax. The browser capacity, so this is just basically what it could be used, what browser it could be used on. You can use it on Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and up-to-date versions of Opera and Edge may also work. But but if they don't, you need to use the ones that are supported above. Some pros and cons. Um, for pros, it has very fast processing, visual results, so it's very easy to understand and interpret what's going on in your notebook. Also, there are shareable insights, and we'll get to more of that later. You're basically able to share what you produce, your code, to other people if you want to make it public, or you can. It's basically like a repository, public or private. Um, and for the cons, collaboration can be tricky. Converting code reviews are hard, or versioning and code reviews are hard, and it's prone to producing complexity. There are a lot of points that are being made to reduce these cons. Um, for the first part, there's a tool called JupyterLab, which you're able to sort data. It's a sort data of data science IDE that leverages the power of notebooks and makes them more suited for development. Secondly, there is a specific tool for diffing and merging notebooks, so it's easier for collaboration. And on the third point, users can break their analysis into notebooks once it starts to get more complex. So you're able to make it a little bit less complex just by breaking the analysis. Starting a notebook server. You can start by running a notebook server from the command line using the following command, Jupyter Notebook. This will print some information about the notebook server in your console and open a web browser to the URL of the web application. And clicking on this will take you to the dashboard, and your browser should like this on the web page. So we have the files, what's running in your clusters, we have your logout, upload, and new is what you use to produce a new notebook, or produce a new produce a new notebook, and then you're able to generate cells. We'll get to that later. From the dashboard, you can click on new to create a new notebook, just like what I said. And upon creating the notebook, you'll be able to use the notebook cells, which use the kernel that you chose when you started the notebook. So this is what we were talking about earlier, about how each notebook uses its own kernel. So in the beginning, when you create a notebook, you're able to choose your own kernel. For most cases, you'll start out with Python 3 as a kernel, and this means you'll write as well as run code in these cells. So not only are you able to code in these cells, but you can run them and print your output. So it's very good for testing or just showing your results of your code. Adding rich content. There are technically 4 cell types: code, markdown, raw, and BC convert, and heading. The heading cell is no longer supported and will display a dialog that says as much. Instead, you are supposed to use markdown for your headings. The primary cell types that you will use for your code are the code and markdown cell types. You have already learned how to code cells. You already learned how code cells work, so let's learn about how to style your text with markdown. In markdown, you can add headers, text, lists, as well as code and syntax. And here's an example. As you can see, you're able to add a header to the top of your markdown cell, as well as the code here, where it prints the syntax highlighting for Python. Exporting notebook files. Notebook converts or exports your notebook into one of the following formats. You can convert it to HTML, LaTeX, PDF, Reveal, Markdown, restructured text, and executable scripts. The NB convert tool uses Jinja templates under the covers to convert your notebook files into these other formats. For sharing, for some people, people may want to share their code with other colleagues or present it to the public for research purposes. When you create a notebook, you'll see a button on the menu that says File. When you click this, you can see that Jupyter gives you the option to download your notebook as a HTML, PDF, Markdown, or restructured text, or a Python script in the notebook file. With the NB convert, like I said before, you can make sure that you can calculate an entire notebook non-interactively, saving it in a place or to a variety of other formats. The fact that you can do this makes notebooks a powerful tool for ETL and for reporting. There are other options for sharing. You can share by creating, listing, and loading GitHub GIFs from your notebook documents. Also, you can use Jupyter Hub and spawn, manage, and proxy multiple instances of the single user. A Jupyter Notebook Server. In short, it's a platform for hosting notebooks on a server with multiple users. Also, you can make a binder and a TMPNB to get temporary environments to reproduce your notebook execution. A binder is a collection of tools for building and executing version-controlled computational environments that contain code, data, and interactive front ends like Jupyter Notebook. And TMPNB launches temporary notebook servers. So in conclusion, the Jupyter Notebook is an extremely useful tool, not only for teaching, but as well as sharing data with others, with colleagues, or even for research. You're able to turn your notebook into a slideshow or even share it online, like a repository. It is always a great tool to be used as to try out as a new piece of software, but I highly recommend giving Jupyter Notebook a shot to see what it's capable of doing. Thank you.